Hi everybody, Gunman here, and thank you for once again joining me on my journey as I complete my... Oh my god, let me restart, sorry. Thank you for again joining me on my journey as I reread all the stories on my favorites list on fanfiction.net. If you're just joining for the first time, I've been reading fanfiction for almost 15 years, so my favorites list on this one website got a little bloated, and I decided to go back and see how shitty my taste used to be. So far I've read about a little over 400 fics, and over half of them have been kicked off this list, so I am pruning a lot of crap. Though, honestly, it's not as much crap as just mediocre stuff or things that I thought were going to progress and then just didn't. Things that ended before they could actually get interesting. But let's dive in with something interesting, something different from that, which is an actually complete fic. And I have quite a few of those, but it is still, hit and miss whether these fics are complete. More often than not, they're not. So this one is called The Fifth Act by Sinnatious, and it's a Final Fantasy VII time travel fic. I think it takes place after Advent Children, but and when Cloud gets sent back to the past, he gets pulled into a time during the Wutai War with Shinra. So this one was a bit odd in that the main problem I had with this was the second act. Like, this can basically be split up into three parts, where the beginning is when Cloud first gets into the past and deals with his parts in the Wutai War and then eventually he gets to Midgar. And then the next part, which is the problematic part, is basically he becomes a member of Shinra. Like, he becomes a soldier. He gets employed by Shinra and just stays there for a rather substantial amount of time. Like, even though I'd say this is there's like three parts of the story, basically half of this story falls in this second act, and that's the part where it's really doesn't work for me, because it's like, this is Cloud post Advent Children. He hates Shinra. He always hated Shinra, but now he's even more understanding and knowledgeable of all the problems it has, and he just decides to start working there. It doesn't feel right, and there's always that inconsistency. Even though the story tries to take steps to justify it, it just never felt really great. What happens during this time, and actually a bit before, is Cloud starts bonding with Janus, actually, which bring for one of the three generals from Crisis Core. He bonds with Janus, and they get a bit of a friendship, and he becomes a mentor to Zack and Kunzel. I'm sorry, I'm a little itchy nose. But anyway, those relationships are a fun change and with dynamics and stuff. But the second act was kind of like a slog for me. Maybe it was that disconnect and there was just other things, but it wasn't super interesting or intriguing, and I kept drifting off until it transitioned to the third act, where Cloud once again gets captured by Hojo and becomes goes for experimentation and stuff. And once that happens, which is like the last, I think, like 10 chapters, it starts rushing to the end with a huge climax and stuff that is pretty interesting, and the action and tension ratchets back up to being super intriguing. And that last act really kept my attention throughout this entire reading time. So it's a mixed bag, but I do feel overall that the first and the third acts are good enough to outweigh the middle slog, and I did enjoy this overall as a story. I think it's pretty good, and if people want stories with Cloud and Sephiroth bonding a bit, they'll probably like it even more. I found that to be a little unnatural, or it just felt odd for me. But if people like Cloud and Sephi, which I know that's a fan base, you'll like this a lot. And this stays on my list. Alright, so the next one is Iron Ikari by Gunman. And this is an Evangelion fic crossover with Iron Man, the movie series from the MCU. This is basically just Iron Man 2, the movie, with Shinji along for the ride. Like, the first chapter, and I believe the thing was even published the day Iron Man 2 came out, which was like, okay, way to jump on it as fast as possible. It basically just is the movie, beat by beat, with Shinji just being next to him and occasionally donning a suit as well, instead of Tony. Like the opening scene of Iron Man 2, in this one, Shinji's the one in the suit, not Tony, even though Tony's on the field in the car, and things like that. And like Shinji, being just as smart as Tony because of shenanigans, figures out how to solve the problem with Stark's palladium poisoning before Fury does. That's okay. There's a couple of funny jokes here with Shinji getting his own assistant of Mari Makanami, which did a chuckle, but otherwise this is basically a pointless story, and if you've seen the movie, you don't need to read this at all, and it's not super intriguing on its own, so it's gonna fall off my list. Alright. Story 3. This one is called Cupboard Follow-Up by Janus Tenshin. And this is a continuation of a very, very small short scene from Rorschach Blot's Omake collection, Odd Ideas. And it has that scene in the start of this story, so you don't need to go to the other story to find it. It's really short, not very long, and basically what happens is it takes place during Harry's second year, and as he's just walking around at night, he stumbles across Luna, who'd been trapped in a cupboard because of the rampant bullying, and then they get a bit of a friendship that gets created with Harry also defending Luna for a bit. If you just want a small bit of that, it's fine, it's perfectly serviceable, but there's no real reason to read this more than once. There's nothing super intriguing. It's just, if you just want to see, Harry befriends Luna, she's a little girl, and they bond over their problems with cupboards, fine, but like it's nothing amazing. You don't need to come back to this, and it's gonna fall off my list. More Harry Potter continues on with Midnight Blues by the Plot Bunny Whisperer, and this one it's a two-shot, not very long, about Harry basically getting killed accidentally by his relatives, and then dealing with the afterlife, and then coming back for a short while to finish off Voldemort. It's not super interesting or funny. It just kind of is, you know. I think like during the entire time I let out like a small chuckle once near the end, but otherwise it's just this thing is just there. Like I think it was trying to draw humor from creating this super absurd idea of how the afterlife works and how special Harry is and that, but it's not that unique or out there as I think the author thought it was. So there's not really much humor to be gained from that, and the parts where it cuts back to the Wizarding World, where you know all the stuff that's happening after his death, and when Harry shows up to clean up, those are definitely not funny, you know, because it's just basically Harry violently murdering all the Death Eaters and leaving their body parts strewn around for other people to find. So there's not really humor in this, and not even much drama, as like there's like one small scene where Harry does meet the others, but really it's just, hey, I'm here, good on you for living, keep living, bye, and just leaves. It's not a super dramatic moment or anything. It like that's the problem with this story. I keep saying all these things or that it tries to be and it just isn't, which is weird because it's so small and I really shouldn't. This is basically a nothing of a story. You can skip it and it's gonna fall off my list. Okay, now something that's not Harry Potter is Naruto. One of the other huge collections on my list. This story is called Q, just the letter Q. Oh my god, I feel whatever. It's called Q. It's by Oni Rudra 37, and this one's just this one's weird. I like. It's unfinished. Let's get that out of the way. But overall, I don't even know why I added this to my list. Like I've said before that I might have said before, there are some stories that I've added to my list because I'm like, this seems really good, and I think like it'll become something more interesting, because that's how most of these unfinished stories get on my list. Like I read them as they were just updating, and I add them to my list because I think they'll be updated into something really good. But I don't. If I did, I feel this was a really weird taste of. I don't understand what I was thinking when I added this. So the story starts with like Naruto just being super intelligent and talented in seals, but he also starts by cutting and mutilating himself by like carving seals into his arms and stuff, where he almost dies of blood loss. And all of that's basically unexplained of why he's like that. Because aside from that, it seems like the rest of his backstory and stuff is basically the same. From there, he becomes a ninja, and then after the bell test, like because of some explosions or something, he gets arrested and is sent to prison for a year. And during that time, it's like super corrupt prison and stuff where he kills a bunch of the guards and stuff like that, and gets a mentor who then dies in prison, of course, and then just comes back a year later, joins Team 7, and then canon continues as normal, whereas they're going to the wave mission, which, time should have changed. The wave mission shouldn't have been there, but that's not a huge deal. The writing itself is super like odd and disjointed. Didn't feel coherent a lot of the time, and it muddies the points it wants to hit. Like there's some parts where I feel like it was trying to be super dramatic or like emotional, but because it's a little hard to follow certain points, or just like maybe it kept jumping around in weird ways, it just didn't feel right, and the emotional parts didn't hit at all. The reactions of everybody else to Naruto is really weird, and it feels unnatural, where it's like it jumps, like Kiba is like super just aggressive to him for seemingly no reason. I'm really just confused about that and stuff. Maybe a better writer could have salvaged this. I just feel like this guy this just doesn't feel coherent at all, and not only does it not feel coherent, but the actual plot or ideas that are trying to get made don't seem to work with each other, and it was really weird read that I did not enjoy. You can safely skip this one without any worry, and it's gonna fall off my list. Alright, next is a Kim Possible fic, which is called On Four Legs by Gabriel Blessing. And Kim Possible was I did grow up with Kim Possible. I watched the show. I was a teenager at the time, but I did enjoy the show a lot. But I didn't really get into the fanfics of it. This one I found. I know how I found this one. This one I found because I've read some of Gabriel Blessing's other fics, which are on my. Some of them are on my list. I met him through one of his Fate Stay Night fics. I can't remember which one. It was immediately either probably the Hill of Swords, which is on my list and will be coming up in a later video. But this one, so I went through his stuff and I read some of his other stories. This is a short horror story that takes place during the Camp Wannaweep episode with Gil, the mutated fish guy. It's basically a short, it's a short story of terrible monster with a badass or unstoppable. Thinking about it now, it honestly felt like a episode of Supernatural. The early episodes where it was more just about the monster of the week and them like dealing with stuff like, you know, season 1. And that's what it was, where it's like you have one person who knows what's going on, all these other people who are just like civilians in the situation, and then they're fighting it off and dealing with it. I found this to be really interesting. You know, the story knows how to keep the monster scary by showing very little of it and letting like its actions build up the tension. We get very few direct interactions with the beast, but all of them are very, very interesting and terrifying, and it just keeps ratcheting up the tension in a really, really good way. And I think this is a really good short horror story that's going to stay on my list. So if you want to see like a bit of badass or unstoppable and some horror in there, definitely give this a look. Alright, and the final one for this video is I Still Say It Looks Like a Nail by Dogbird Carroll. Again and again I've said I've had Dogbird Carroll fix on this in my list. I've mentioned him a lot in these videos because, again, like, I've read so many of them so far, and spoiler alert, there's going to be a lot more of them on this list. I love his style of humor and his stuff a lot, and this is pretty much the same. Like, the jokes are funny, and this one is a Buffy the Vampire Slayer crossover with Stargate SG-1. And, you know, Xander just slides into the SG-1 crew dynamic and stuff rather well. However, unlike some of this, I'm not going to say unlike, it's just what is here in these 9 chapters is fun, but it feels like it needed a bit more maturing before I'd let it stay on my list. Basically, it's not that like the jokes are childish or that it needed to grow up. It just needed to. It feels like the start of an idea, and even with the 9 chapters in there, it doesn't feel like it's fully figured out what it wants its main jokes or main focus to be. And yeah, it feels like there's a lot of, especially just the fact that there's what feels like a lot of setups for punchlines that just never pay off yet. And it's, yeah, I feel like if there was like even just a couple more chapters, I wouldn't mind keeping this on my list, because again, even I still enjoyed this story a lot, and I like the comedy of it. I just feel that, yeah, it's just missing, like, a couple more chapters wouldn't complete the story, but it would at least give it more of a fully furnished identity. So while I did enjoy this a lot, this one is not going to stay on my list. And there we go. 430 stories now that I've read of this, which is a little over a third of my full favorites list. 213 have stayed on my list, so again, still close to half, but now I'm on the other side of it. So there you go. If you are interested in reading any of these stories, I have links in the description. If you want to say I'm an idiot for my opinion, please feel free to leave a comment talking about either my terrible taste or my stupid ideas about brilliant pieces of work. If you want to keep up to date when I post these videos, please subscribe. Again, thank you all so much for watching based on this, and I will catch you in the next video. Bye.